Hi, this is Shawnee Lavender, the Conscious Moms Coach, and today I'm here to talk about a popular topic with many people, at least in their minds, even if it's not something they're always talking about. It is the idea of obedience or respect. So I'm going to talk about both of those and what they are and what they are not, if they're related or if they're not related. And so I invite you to sit down with me and check it out. So what I want to start by saying is my view is that obedience is old paradigm parenting. And I'm going to tell you why I think it's popular, and I think you'll see why in some places and with some people it's still a popular idea. And then I'll share with you some other ideas. Including, I'm going to give some specific tips of things you can actually do, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So when I talk about obedience being an old paradigm parenting concept, I'm talking about some of the ideas. Popular phrase that was once popular was that children should be seen and not heard. Now, to me, that is this idea related to this idea of obedience, where we adults were wanting children who would, by their behavior, or in this case, lack of certain behaviors, that would be conveying mainly to the other adults around us that the child was properly controlled, properly under our control, that we were in charge of our household, we were in charge of our family. And so this was idea that we wanted to be respected as adults. And so the way we understood that was that if children were seen, and sometimes actually even not seen, right? But that they were not underfoot, they were not interrupting our adult lives and our adult world, that was therefore demonstrating to the world around us that my children respect me because they know that I come first and I am to be obeyed and they are to do as my bidding. It's almost like, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but it's almost like they were, our slaves. It's like they should only do what I want them to do. And we really did treat children in a very, sometimes very violent way and hurtful ways when they didn't do what we said they should be doing, or they did things that we said not to do. So this idea again that like they're under my control. Even those old ideas of women used to be property of men had that same kind of connotation, that's obedience was really linked to that very strongly. So that's an old paradigm idea. I mean, I know some people still believe in it. I am absolutely not one of them. So I'm just going to state that very clearly. It's old. It's outdated. It doesn't make sense. And frankly, I don't think it made so much sense, but those are part of the reasons why I think it was such a strong idea of something that parents should be able to get from their children was obedience. Now, I will say one other thing that I think is true, and this is to maybe soften it a little bit, is that I do think that there also were in situations in our past as humans, there were definitely not, although this can be true for some modern families and at certain times in certain situations, but generally speaking, life used to have more inherent everyday risks. Now, there's still risks, I totally get that, but some of the risks, if you were a pioneer on a frontier, those were more serious. If you didn't do, or you didn't know what to do, and you went out with a bunch of, grizzly bears, or you were out, in a certain environment that was not really a very safe environment, the risks were big. So, and that's an extreme example, but what I'm saying is I think also that there was a sense for parents that obedience was a way to keep children safe and alive. And of course, I applaud us, right? We should want our children to be alive and be safe. So in those times, though, when the risks were higher, that idea that a child would know within themselves, oh, here's what mom or dad has always told me to do, then I just do it. I don't think I'm going to just follow what they want me to do. So that had that sense of, here's a way that I can protect my child and give them something to stay safe. That was a noble intention behind it. It was like, yeah, don't make your kid think, just do what mom has told you to do. And so that's the noble intention. What I would say is that now in our modern life, that most of the time, or under normal circumstances, the risks to life and limb are not usually huge. Now, again, there are exceptions to that, but in general, we don't necessarily need obedience to mitigate against those risks, because the risks, generally speaking, are not there. I also think there are other ways to work with risks when they are there, but that's not the focus of this video. So that was one piece. The second piece, going back to the first thing I mentioned, this idea of it was showing we were in control and we were the patriarch or the matriarch of the family, and everybody just followed along and did what they were supposed to do. And that showed that we were, the respected family member. I personally believe that putting obedience and respect as equals, if you put an equal sign between them, or say they're synonyms, that you misunderstand the two words. So that's my take on it. And so my view primarily is that obedience as a concept is a fear-based idea. So we obey because we fear consequences. We fear negative repercussions of not obeying. Respect is something that we give to others, or we extend to others, because they've earned it in some way from us. We say, oh yeah, I want to treat them that way because the way they treat me, and it's this earned piece, and it's a freely chosen. So it's not, oh, I'm doing this, I'm treating this other person this way because I'm trying to avoid getting punished for it, or I'm trying to get a reward for it. That's a coercive. So if we're seeking gain or trying to avoid loss, then that's not respect. It may look sometimes externally, we might say, oh, that's respect, but it's not. So just because you can see something on the outside and say, oh, that child did this, so they must respect their parent, you're not making a logical conclusion. There could be respect, but it could also be obedience and fear-based. So I want to share with you, that's my gist, that's the background, that's the foundation that I'm bringing to this talk today. So I want to share with you now, well, what can you do to build a respect-based relationship with your children? Because here's the thing I want to say as something that sometimes we don't say, as conscious parents in particular, is that conscious parents, we also do appreciate it when things flow smoothly in our lives. When it's easy to get out the door, when it's easy to get in the car seat, when a trip to the grocery store flows smoothly. So to say that we don't want our children to do as we've asked them to do, I think would be lying, would be disingenuous. What I find is that conscious parents sometimes forget that. It's like, yes, so we want oftentimes the same kind of results. We want our children to do as we've asked. We want them to respect our wishes and our requests. And yet we don't want to raise an obedient child. We sort of bristle at that idea. And I think it's important to own, though, that yeah, we still want some of the same results, because if we try and just throw obedience out and say, oh, that's awful, it's toxic, I don't want that, we're not giving some truth to what is also inside of us of, yeah, I would like it to be, easy and smooth. So that's my little caveat. Yeah, we want those things too. So my take is that we do that by building a respect-based relationship. We're not going to go for obedience, and we want some of those similar types of results. So I'm going to share, I think it looks like I have 8 ideas here. I actually numbered them this time. So I'm going to share those ideas with you, and feel free to comment or ask some questions if you want. if you want to, if you want some clarification or want to share something. So, one thing that I think we can do that is helpful in building a respect based relationship with our children is to afford them autonomy and authority over themselves and their choices. Now, I think most of you are going to say, well, I do that. I do that. And you probably do. I do too. What I would say is that I often see in others, and I see this in myself too, that there are times when sometimes as adults, that we exert or we attempt to exert more control than is actually necessary. So just last night, my husband will love that I'm sharing this. So just last night, our daughter, who's 7.5, she was, we were out on our deck eating dinner. It was a nice evening, and my husband and my bicycles are chained to our deck railing, and it's right next to our table, and my daughter was playing with his bike. One of our cats had been clawing at the tires, and so my daughter was over there then like, oh, let's play with the bike, and I was finding it irritating. Who knows why? I mean, I had some logical reasons for it, right? As we do as adults, right? Oh, here's good reasons for it. And yet I was like, don't do that. And I don't remember exactly how I said it. If he wants to comment, he can do that. But I basically was exerting control over behaviors that she was choosing that really were not that consequential. Could it maybe have shifted the gears on the bike, which you're not supposed to do while it's not pedaling? Yeah, maybe, probably not. So that's an example of there are times as adults that we go into control mode or influence mode or direction mode when we don't need to. So that could be as simple as, hey, give that block to so-and-so so he can play too. Or, well, let's stop being on the swing so this kid can take a turn. I'm not saying don't ever do those things. I'm saying be mindful of, are you inserting yourself in their free choice in a way that is necessary, or is it unnecessary? So ask that question for yourself, and keep doing those things that you already do to give them choice and autonomy. Things like getting to choose their own clothes, choosing within a range of eating what they do eat. Maybe you put all the food on their plate, but then they choose what to eat of it, rather than saying you've got to eat 5 bites of this or you have to clean your plate. Keep giving those kind of choices too. So that's number one. Number two, be aware of your assumptions and projections. And so you might be thinking, well, what does that have to do with respect-based relationship? One of the things that I really encourage parents to do, especially as it relates to discipline, is to learn how to give our children empathy. That's to really be with them, to accept their experience as completely valid. And sometimes in doing that, we make some guesses. So we make some assumptions about, oh, I think you're feeling mad, or I think you're sad, or this you didn't like. So we're going to do that some, and I think that can be really useful. However, think about just in general, if you went around your town or around your neighborhood, and you basically told everybody, well, it looks to me like you're having a bad day, or it looks like you're cranky, or it looks like you're really happy, or you're putting your ideas onto them in a way that isn't necessarily affording them this idea of, you know what, they get to choose. Those are their things to say. Those are their things to express. So be aware of whether you sometimes are making assumptions and sort of getting into their business in a way that doesn't show them that, you know what, you respect them as this independent person and they get to choose whether they want to share things with you or not, that they have their own ideas. So simply be aware of what you might be assuming about them and then acting out of that, behaving from that, or what you might even be projecting onto them. That happens a lot with parents. Sometimes, with our own childhood challenges, I was talking with a mom about this recently. She was talking about her children lacking some esteem that she thought was something that she had struggled with. And so I was like, yes, and be aware if you're also seeing their stuff and labeling their stuff as your stuff versus like, oh, well, yeah, maybe they do have challenges with esteem, and yet that's different. It's different than me, and they are not me. So be aware of those assumptions and projections, so that you're not just inadvertently stepping on your children and their autonomy over themselves. The third idea is don't hold them to unrealistic standards. And don't do this with yourself either, but here's what I notice with adults and parents in particular. Maybe not parents in particular, probably all adults, that we still have this idea that children should always be able to behave well. And so when they behave poorly, that we, you know, basically get on their case, whether that means we give them a talking to, or, you know, some parents use timeout, or like, oh, I've got to teach them not to do that thing. Well, you know, they're learning and growing. So that's part of the process, right? Is not always doing it right. And so you really want to afford them those opportunities to fail and to do things not the way that you want them ultimately to do them. And when we do that, that builds respect, because when somebody is always holding you to this, well, you have to do it perfect, that's really hard to want to be in relationship with that person, because there's really no leeway for you. It's like, you got to always do it right. You got to always do it right. And so that to me is more about going to the fear and coercion based idea of relationship that you don't want with your children. So you want to have that healthy respect. That means that, yeah, you respect that they're human. And that means sometimes they're going to be at their best humanity. Sometimes they're going to be at their worst, and they're all okay. Even if, you know, you talk later about, well, let's make different choices, that's fine. Just by giving them that freedom to not always be perfect, that shows that, hey, look, I respect you, and I'm not going to be so demanding with you. Okay. So that's number 3. Number 4 is own your responsibility when you treat them as yours to control. So I have a conversation with my daughter to talk to her about the bike thing from last night. When you recognize that, oh, I was operating from that old paradigm, and I was in my own stuff about, you know, I wanted to look like I had it together as a parent, or that I wanted people to think, wow, her kid is really well behaved. Own that stuff, you know, say, I'm human too, and I didn't do it the way I want to do it. That builds respect, because it shows you are human, and it shows that, guess what? Moms and dads make mistakes too. And we're learning and we're attempting to grow from them. So it's not just an excuse. It's to say, you know what? I'm on this growth journey too. And so I'm working on it. And I recognize that this was a time where I missed the mark. Okay. So that's a great, those are the kind of people, personally at least, those are the kind of people I really like being in relationship with, because they're not all about, well, it was only you, you know, you had a problem with it, it wasn't my issue. It's like, no, I get that the way I did it didn't really work, or that it would be easy for you to not like it. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's kiss and make up. Let's do over. Let's go forward. All right, I better check these off because I'm losing track. So that's number 4. Own your responsibility when you have, you know, stepped over that boundary and you have gone back more into that controlling mode. So that means 5 is next. I'm really good at this math. Here we go. So number 5, this is one of my favorites. Treat disobedience, I'm putting that in air quotes because, again, that's a judgment on our part. So treat those times where your child has not done as you've asked, or done the opposite of what you've asked, as an impersonal action. So at some level, one of the things I notice is, because I think we carry that old paradigm thinking in our head that says that my skill, my value, my esteem within my community is based on these results that you know, my children provide. That when that is where our self-worth is tied to that idea that our children have to behave a certain way for us to be valued and esteemed, and us to feel okay about ourselves, Then you can imagine when they disobey, all of a sudden now it's a personal affront and we're mad, and we're really, what we are is scared and hurt, and but we use mad usually to cover that up because it's easier and it gives us something to do. So now we're like, that kid, they don't, I'm going to show them who's boss. That's sort of that feeling that comes up for us. And so now their disobedience is something that we really want to make sure they don't do it again because we're mad about it because it showed us up. Don't do that. That's scary. That's where we go, off the deep end as parents. So when they do something that you've asked them not to do, or they're not doing something that you've asked them to do, take it as an impersonal thing. They're not trying to show you up or make you look bad. That's not what it's about. So just let it be. Don't take it personally. Treat it as something like, hey, that doesn't really work. We're in, a big city and I don't know where we're going. And so it doesn't really work for me for you to run off because I don't know where we are. And I'm trying to even look where we're going. And so now I'm feeling anxious because I can't see you and I don't even know where I am. That's a different conversation than, don't you ever run away from me. You come back here. It's like, that's not going to help your child in the long run. It's going to scare them in the short run, but in the long run, it's not really going to help them. So you want to just treat it impersonally. It's not about you. Work with them. Be neutral. It's chill. You can do it. Don't freak out. You can tell that was one of my favorite ones, right? I like that one. Okay, number 6. So that means we got 3 more. 6, 7, 8. Number 6. Here's something else to do, okay? So explain your requests, of course, in an age-appropriate way. You don't, with a 2-year-old, don't get into lots of explanation, long dialogue, and yada, yada, yada. Don't do that because you're going to lose them. But rather than relying on the because I said so, even if you don't say that, if it's that part of we have to do that. Well, why? Where's the rule? It's like, there is no such thing. Now, sometimes there are rules, here's the speed limit. Here's the things you can pack in your bag to go on the airline. Here's what you can't pack. Sure, there are rules. But as parents, again, sometimes we fall back on that idea of because I said so, but that's not a respectful way to build a relationship. Building a respect-based relationship says, I think you deserve to know why it is I'm asking for this thing from you. Just makes perfect sense to me. Now, does it take sometimes more time, or sometimes you just want to rely on because I said so? I get it. Yeah, me too. And yet that doesn't build that trust with your child. And so when you're willing to say, here's some of the why, here's some of the whys behind this, and why I'm even asking this, that shows, even if they don't always understand it at their age, it shows that you have consideration for them and they are important enough and matter enough to you for you to take that time to engage them in that kind of conversation. If it was somebody you literally had control over, you're not going to do that. You just don't do that. You bark out your orders and you go forth. But if you want somebody your child in this case, to respect you in the long term, build it now. Tell them why and help them understand your perspective. That's one of my favorite ones too, because it's just fun and it's challenging sometimes. Yesterday at the grocery store, my daughter was wanting 2 different kinds of popsicles, and I didn't want to get them. I just didn't. I didn't want to spend the money, and we already had some other treats at home. And I was like, I just want to get the one popsicle at our other groceries, and I want to go home. And so my daughter was really upset. And so I'm like, I hear you. We're not going to get 2 kinds, so on and so forth. And so she asked me, she was like, why? And I was like, oh no, she's so smart. So I explained, I said, I don't want to spend the money and we already have other ones and we can get the other one next time. And so I said, well, why do you want the 2 popsicles, 2 varieties of popsicles? And she said, why? And I was like, okay, we'll get them this time. Because I was like, That makes sense to me. My reason made sense too, but sort of like, yeah, okay, those, I give those about a 2 out of 10 for validity. Hers was like a 7 out of 10. So she won. It's not, it's like, okay, that makes sense. So that to me, even though I felt frustrated at times in that interchange, it was my way of showing to her, yeah, you know what? I said this and it's what I wanted, and yet I'm open to this engagement that we have with each other, and I respect you as a person, and so let's talk about it. Okay, you have better ideas, great, we're going for it. There were other things I said no to in the store that she wanted, so it's like, yeah, we're gonna sometimes negotiate that. And some people, again, old style, they tend to think, oh no, you're gonna get this kid who negotiates and you don't have boundaries. I have boundaries, and I also have enough awareness to know sometimes I set a boundary that I actually didn't need, or that actually is not something that's like, now that I consider it from a different perspective, yeah, that's a big deal. Not That's a boundary that doesn't need to be there right now. That to me is respect, because it's saying, you know what, I'm open. I'm not some pliable doormat, and yet I'm open to being engaged and seeing where things go. So that's a longer one, but I love that, because I think if you're like me, one of the things you're looking for is giving your child that balance of how to be in respectful relationship with other people, showing them that they have value for you, treating them in a way that they feel respected. So you want that, and yet you also want your child to have it. The old paradigm was pretty much the child got negated and everyone else deserved the respect. And sometimes the pendulum, a lot of people swung the pendulum totally the other way, and as parents sometimes they just they never voiced their needs or their wants. And so now that was where a child wasn't learning, hey, we consider other people, so that's not healthy either. So we're looking for that middle place of balance where it's both of us are getting respect and appreciation and honoring of what our perspective and what our wants and needs are. So I know that those of you that watch my videos regularly, that's what you're looking for too. So that's an important way to do it. Okay, last two things is alert your child to times when flexibility is not really an option. So this is where this, I'm not going to use it with the popsicles, but if for some reason, like let's say I had $5, literally five, I had $5 in my purse, and that's what we were going to buy the groceries with. And she's like, well, I want 2 packs. I'd be like, I got $5. So flexibility, I'm sorry, it's just not, that's what I got, kid. That that's one example, but it might be, okay, at in a busy parking lot, there's not the flexibility right now of you running around. That's not, I have a boundary. We're not going to do that. So alert your child to those times when, yes, this is normally how we do it, where we do have this give and take, and I am open. And right now is not one of those times. This is a time where if mom says, step forward onto the escalator, that it's time for you to step forward onto the escalator, or I will pick you up, because, there are people walking behind us and I don't want you to get trampled. So alert your children to that. That shows respect, again, shows that you're saying, hey, I want you to know that this is coming. It's going to deviate from the way we normally do it in our family. And so I'm giving you a heads up about that. One caveat on that one I will say is don't overuse that. Again, if you have your own challenges, like, oh, I feel really nervous, in parking lots, and so you're like, oh, they always have to hold my hand. Well, in a not busy parking lot, maybe that's not really an issue. It's your issue. It's not an issue. So don't overuse that. Be mindful and check in and go, is that really necessary for me to say, what, flexibility right now, not an option. It might be, it might not. Check in and you'll know the answer. Okay, last thing, and this is a fun one. They are all fun, but this is actually literally fun, is give your children opportunities to disobey you and have fun with it. So I talked about this in a webinar that I did this week. And it's the game that you play where you might say something like, you better not dare, blah, 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 tickle mommy, or you better not dare hide right now. That is basically the clue to your child. This is the thing that actually you should do right now. But it's not, you're not forcing them, you're inviting them to, I just said, you better not dare. And you do it in an exaggerated, silly way so that they know, hey, mom or dad is joking. Mom or dad is being silly right now. So that gives them that, it's the green flag, right? Like, go for it, to do exactly what you haven't said and disobey you, and have fun. And so that is a nice tension reliever for them, because as children, they live in the adult world. And so all day long, at least starting at school age, all day long, they have usually a fair number of strictures on what they can and can't do, what's acceptable and not acceptable to the adults and others in their environment. So they really have a lot of time spent following direction and needing to be obedient in that sense. And so when you give them this opportunity to willfully, like, okay, we're going to play with this now. I just told you don't do this thing. And then they do it. Then you can play with, and they can play with, ooh, I'm doing what mom said not to do. Or, you can play with, like, I'm going to get you. Oh, you're such a bad kid. Who's not listening? And you're doing it all in the spirit of fun. So there's never, there's not harshness about it. There's not a teasing quality. It's really about fun. And you can really ham it up. So you can fall on the floor and say, oh, nobody listens to me. Oh, nobody loves mommy. And you can just play with it. And so it's this idea where it's a venting, it's a release. And it is that chance where they also know, like, oh yeah, this is one of those times where, yeah, me doing whatever is cool, it's okay. And so then when you do request and say, I really want you to follow what I'm saying now, it's that give and take. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't do it earlier. And, that's the game we were playing. And so now this is the game we're playing. The game we're playing is now I'm going to do exactly what mommy asked me to do. So it gives that balance point again, because now they've swung over here and they've been disobedient and done all the things you didn't want them to do. And so now it's like, now mom's really saying it's time for us to go. I know you don't like Playdate's Den, but it's time for us to go. And so it's easier for them to accept that when they have enough balance with the, I don't have to do what you say. So those are my 8 tips. I'm not going to repeat them because they're not like little short points. I'm going to pause. So those are my suggestions on how you can specifically build a trust-based and respect-based relationship with your child so that you can still have some of those benefits that, again, we're admitting that we do want. We want children who do listen to us and who do respond most of the time in the way that we've asked them to respond. So we want that. And yet we are doing it without the negative consequences of squashing their spirit, forcing them to do things, having them fear us or fear what happens when they aren't doing what we say. So I hope that that's helpful to you and gives you some things you can actually practice with, rather than just being about this idea of you want to have a respect-based relationship versus one that's based on fear and trying to instill obedience. So I wanted it to be practical. So let me know how that works for you. And you can find me here most Thursdays on Facebook. For those of you watching on Facebook, I'm here most Thursdays about this same time. And if you don't follow me there, or it's not as convenient for you, I post my videos on my YouTube channel, which you can find, just go over to YouTube and look up Shawnee Lavender Coaching. So you can find me there. You can find me also in Facebook in my group, the Conscious Moms Circle. That's about 3,500 98% moms, 2% dads worldwide. And we engage in conversations and support around being a conscious parent and being a conscious person. So feel free to look us up there and join. We love to have people who are on the path supporting us and being supported by us. So feel free to look us up there. You can also find me on my Facebook page, Shawnee Lavender Coaching, and on my website, ShawneeLavender.com. So that's Char. Again, if you missed it at the beginning, That's my assistant for the day. And he assisted very well. He just hung out over there. So thank you for spending this time with Char and me. My name is Shawnee Lavender. I'm the Conscious Moms Coach, and I wish you a delightful day. Bye-bye.